You know what's the most powerful thing a human being can possess in this world? It's not money, it's not intelligence, it's not even talent. It's the ability to stay completely calm when everything around you is falling apart. And most people never develop it. Most people spend their entire lives getting triggered by things that don't even matter. A rude comment, someone's opinion, a bad day, an unanswered text, and they call that living. But today, I'm going to show you something different. Today, we talk about how to train yourself to become genuinely, deeply, and permanently unbothered, not as a pose, not as a mask, not as pretending you don't care, but as a real internal state that you build brick by brick through discipline and awareness. Let me ask you something honestly. When was the last time someone said something to you and it lived in your head rent free for hours, or maybe days? Someone made a comment, maybe about your work, your life, your choices, and even though you smiled and walked away, inside, you were replaying it on a loop, building arguments, feeling the heat in your chest. That feeling right there, that's the opposite of unbothered. And if you're honest with yourself, that feeling controls more of your life than you realize. It controls how you show up at work. It controls how you treat the people you love. It controls your sleep, your focus, your confidence, your entire emotional world. And none of that happens because of what they said. It happens because of what's happening inside you. That's the secret most people miss. Being unbothered is an inside job. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Most people think being unbothered means being cold. They think it means not caring about anything or anyone. They see that one person who seems to glide through life without a scratch, and they think, oh, they must be emotionally numb. They must be heartless. But that's completely backwards. The people who are truly unbothered are not numb. They are deeply rooted. There's a difference between a dead tree and a deeply rooted one. The dead one doesn't move because it's dry and hollow. The rooted one doesn't move because it has something real holding it in place. You're going to become the rooted tree. And the first thing you need to understand to get there is the concept of emotional reactivity, because that's what you are actually training yourself out of. Emotional reactivity is the automatic, involuntary response you have to external events. Someone insults you, you feel hurt automatically. Someone disrespects you, you feel angry automatically. Someone ignores you, you feel anxious automatically. Notice the word, automatically. That's the enemy, not the person, not the situation, the automaticity of your reaction. Because right now, your nervous system has been conditioned by your childhood, by your experiences, by your environment, and to fire off certain emotions in response to certain triggers. And you've been living inside those automatic reactions without ever questioning them. What we are doing today is building the gap, the space between stimulus and response. And in that space, you find your freedom. Viktor Frankl said that in the concentration camps of Nazi Germany, and he was right, between stimulus and response, there is a space, and in that space is your power. So how do you start building that space? The very first practice is observation without identification. Most people, when they feel an emotion, become the emotion. You feel anxious and suddenly you are anxious. You feel angry and you are angry. The emotion consumes your entire identity in that moment. But the trained mind does something different. It watches. It notices. Oh, interesting. There's anger arising right now. Not, I am angry, but anger is here. That tiny linguistic shift is not just philosophical, it is neurological. When you observe an emotion instead of becoming it, you activate your prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for rational thought. You quite literally interrupt the automatic firing of your amygdala, your brain's alarm system. You are in real time rewiring how your brain handles threat and discomfort. Start doing this today. When something bothers you, pause and name it out loud inside your head. This is irritation. This is jealousy. This is fear of rejection. Name it and watch it. That's step one. But naming it isn't enough because the next thing your mind does is go to story, and this is where most people live forever. In the story, someone doesn't reply to your message and you're already writing a novel. They're ignoring me. They don't respect me. I knew they didn't care. I always end up in these situations. There's something wrong with me. One unanswered text became a full autobiography of your worth as a human being. That is not reality. That is your mind, untrained, running wild. The practice of becoming unbothered requires that you learn to separate what actually happened from the story you added to it. What actually happened? They didn't reply. That's it. That's the fact. Everything else, the interpretation, the catastrophizing, the meaning you gave it, that's your creation. And once you see that clearly, you take back the power you handed to reality. Now, I want to talk about something that runs even deeper than all of this because if you don't understand it, none of the techniques will stick, and that is the concept of emotional wounds. Every single time someone or something bothers you deeply, far beyond what the situation actually deserves, there is an old wound being touched. Think about it. Why do some people get destroyed by criticism while others laugh it off? Why does abandonment devastate one person while another moves on easily? It's not about the external event. It's about what that external event is landing on. If someone hits a bruise on your arm, it hurts far more than if they touched normal skin. Your emotional bruises work exactly the same way. The things that bother you most are a map, a direct, honest, painful map, to the places inside you that still need healing. So instead of running from what bothers you or suppressing it, get curious about it. Ask yourself, what is this really about? What old story does this remind me of? What am I actually afraid of here? Because unbothered doesn't mean you've never been wounded. It means you've done the work to heal. And speaking of doing the work, right, let's talk about one of the most powerful things you can do, building what I call an internal identity that doesn't depend on external validation. This is huge. This is the core. The root cause of almost everything that bothers people is a dependency on external input to feel okay about themselves. You need people to agree with you to feel confident. You need people to like you to feel worthy. You need success to feel valuable. You need approval to feel safe. And as long as those needs are running the show, you will be permanently vulnerable to being bothered because external things are unpredictable, unreliable, and completely outside your control. The work is to build an internal identity that is solid regardless of what's happening outside. This means knowing who you are, what you value, and what you stand for, not based on what others reflect back to you, but based on a clear, honest internal inventory of yourself. Here's a practice for this that sounds simple but goes extremely deep. Every single day, write down 3 things you genuinely like about yourself. Not things people have told you, not achievements, but actual qualities you observe in yourself. Maybe you're patient, maybe you're honest even when it's hard, maybe you show up for people, maybe you're resilient. Find them. And here's the rule. They cannot be based on what someone else said. This builds what psychologists call internal locus of control, the belief that your sense of self comes from within, not from without. And as that muscle grows, external opinions begin to lose their grip. They become information at most, not verdicts on your worth. Now, let me talk about something that nobody talks about when they discuss being unbothered, and that is the physical dimension. Your body holds your reactions. When something triggers you, it doesn't start in your mind. It starts in your nervous system. Your heart rate increases. Your cortisol spikes. Your muscles tighten. Your breath becomes shallow. This is your body going into fight or flight. And if you try to think your way out of a physiological state, you will fail every time. That's why logic doesn't work when you're furious or deeply hurt. Your brain is literally offline. The prefrontal cortex, the reasoning brain, gets suppressed when your survival system activates. So the path out is always through the body first. You have to regulate the nervous system before you can access calm rationality. And the most direct path to nervous system regulation is breathing. Not just any breathing, deliberate, slow, extended exhale breathing. When you exhale longer than you inhale, you activate the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest state, and your body physically begins to calm down. Try 4 counts in, hold for 4, exhale for 8. Do that 3 times when you're triggered and watch what happens to the intensity of the emotion. It doesn't disappear, but it becomes workable. That's all you need. Not for it to disappear, but for it to become workable. Let me add something here that most self-improvement content skips entirely, and I think it's one of the most important things you will hear in this video. Being unbothered is not a destination. It is a daily practice. And that means you will still be bothered sometimes. You will have days where someone's words hit you hard and you react before you even realize it. You will have moments where the old patterns come rushing back and you find yourself in the middle of a reaction, wondering what happened to all your progress. And when that happens, listen carefully. That is not failure. That is the practice. The practice is not never being triggered. The practice is the recovery. How fast you come back, how quickly you can observe yourself again, how soon you can return to your center. Think of it like a pendulum. The more trained you are, the shorter the swing and the faster the return. You still swing, you're human, but you don't stay swung. That's the goal. And here's something I want you to sit with. Most of the things that bother you when seen from 1 year into the future are completely irrelevant. Think about something that absolutely ruined your day 2 years ago. Do you even remember what it was? Probably not. Or if you do, it feels small now. The perspective of time reveals the actual scale of things. But you don't have to wait for time to give you that perspective. You can borrow it right now. When something bothers you, ask yourself honestly, will this matter in 1 year? Will this matter in 5 years? And if the answer is no, and it usually is, then you know you are giving an outsized reaction to a small-scale event. That question alone, will this matter in a year, is one of the most effective pattern interrupts that exists, because it moves you from the emotional present into the rational future, and in that shift, the grip of the emotion loosens. Now let's go even deeper because we haven't talked yet about the single biggest source of being bothered for most people, and that is other people's perception of you, what people think of you, what they say about you behind your back, whether they approve of your choices, whether they like you, whether they're judging you. This is the one that runs like background software in most people's minds, quietly consuming energy 24 hours a day, and it's rooted in something very old, very biological, right? Because for our ancestors, being rejected from the tribe meant death. Being seen as unworthy meant exile. The brain's obsession with social approval is a survival mechanism from a world that no longer exists. You are not going to be killed by being disliked. You are not going to die from someone's opinion. But your brain doesn't know that yet, so you have to teach it. The way you teach it is by voluntarily exposing yourself to disapproval in small doses. Do things you know some people won't agree with. Share an opinion you know not everyone will like. Make a choice that's right for you even when others don't understand it, not recklessly and mindfully. And each time you do and survive, each time you act despite the risk of disapproval and find that nothing terrible actually happens, your brain updates its belief about the danger of disapproval. Over time, the fear loses its power. You become genuinely and biologically less bothered by what people think. I want to tell you something about energy, because this connects everything we've talked about and takes it to another level. Every reaction you have to external things costs energy, not metaphorical energy, literal, physiological energy. When you stay in a state of being bothered, replaying, resenting, worrying, seeking validation, you are burning fuel. And that fuel is the same fuel you need for everything that actually matters to you: your creativity, your relationships, your work, your growth, your joy. Being unbothered is not just an emotional preference, it is an energy management strategy. Every time you choose not to react to something that doesn't deserve your reaction, you get that energy back. And over weeks and months of practicing this, the cumulative effect is enormous. People who are genuinely unbothered don't just seem peaceful, they seem powerful. They seem like they have more capacity than everyone else. And they do, because they stopped leaking energy to things that don't deserve it and they redirected it to things that do. Here's something that will feel counterintuitive. One of the most powerful practices for becoming unbothered is gratitude, but not the surface level, list 5 things gratitude that's become a cliche. Real gratitude, the kind that goes so deep that it changes your baseline. When you are genuinely, deeply grateful, when you can look at your life and feel in your bones that you have been given something extraordinary just by being alive and conscious, the small stuff simply doesn't have the same surface area to land on. It's like being so full that there's no room for the petty, the trivial, the small provocations of daily life. Cultivating this depth of gratitude takes practice. It means sitting quietly and actually feeling what you're grateful for, not just listing it. It means noticing the complexity of a normal moment, the fact that your heart is beating, that you can read and understand language, that somewhere on this earth someone loves you, and actually letting that land. That practice done consistently builds a foundation of okayness underneath your life that makes the surface disturbances much, much smaller. Let's talk about boundaries, because no conversation about being unbothered is complete without this. A lot of people think being unbothered means tolerating everything silently. It does not. In fact, people who have no boundaries are the most bothered people on earth, because they're constantly being invaded and they're constantly carrying what isn't theirs. A real boundary is not a wall. It's a clear communication about what you will and won't accept. And setting boundaries is one of the most powerful acts of self-respect. When you have clear boundaries, you don't need to be bothered by people who cross them. You simply enforce the boundary. You speak your truth calmly, clearly, without drama. That doesn't work for me. I'm not comfortable with that. I need this to be different. No anger, no explosion, no resentment, just clarity, because when you have a boundary, the violation of it triggers a response, not a reaction. There's a difference. A reaction is unconscious and explosive. A response is conscious and measured. Boundaries make you capable of response rather than reaction, and that is the core of being unbothered in relationships. I want to talk now about solitude and why it is one of the most underused tools for building this skill. We live in a culture of constant noise, constant stimulation, constant connection, constant input. And in that environment, you never get the chance to know yourself. You never get quiet enough to hear your own voice. You never develop the ability to be with yourself without being entertained or distracted. But here's the thing: the people who are unbothered by the chaos of the outside world are always those who have made peace with their own interior world. If your interior world is chaotic, if you can't be alone for an hour without reaching for your phone, if silence makes you anxious, if stillness feels like a threat, then you will always be dependent on external things to regulate you. And that dependency is exactly what makes you vulnerable to being bothered. Regular, deliberate solitude, sitting with yourself, your thoughts, your feelings, your questions, is training. It is training your inner world to become a place you can return to, a place of calm, of clarity, of rootedness. Make time for it. Even 15 minutes a day of genuine solitude, no phone, no music, no podcast, is enough to begin shifting this. And here's one more thing, perhaps the most important thing that I want you to leave with today. Everything that bothers you is a teacher, not a punishment, not an unfairness, not a sign that life is against you. A teacher. The person who irritates you is teaching you something about your own unhealed places. The situation that overwhelms you is teaching you something about where you need to grow. The criticism that stings is pointing to something you care about deeply and haven't yet made peace with. When you shift from seeing bothersome things as threats to seeing them as information, as data about who you are and where you're growing, your entire relationship to discomfort changes. You stop fighting it. You stop avoiding it. You start moving toward it with curiosity, knowing that every hard thing is a gift wrapped in discomfort. And that shift, that fundamental reorientation to difficulty, is what separates the people who stay small and reactive their whole lives from the people who grow and evolve and become genuinely, deeply, unshakably unbothered. You don't have to be perfect at this. You don't have to master it overnight. You just have to start one breath, one observation, one pause, one boundary, one moment of solitude at a time. And slowly, steadily, the version of you that you are becoming will look back at the version of you today and be grateful that you chose to begin. Because the unbothered life is not a life without problems. It is a life where you are bigger than your problems. And that version of you is not far away. It's one daily practice away. Start today, keep going tomorrow, and never stop.